So the point system is, I think, really, really powerful. We call it points inside the platform. Other people call it gamification. And essentially what it does is it allows you to apply points or reward points to attendees who take specific actions. And those actions can change. So let's actually start by going into the app and going to going to go to an event that I know has points already set up on the, actually, let's go to something that, no, let's go to something, there we go. Okay, so inside of the designer, there's different areas that you're going to see points, right? One of the ones that you've probably seen is inside buttons. There is a, pick an action for points, and you see a whole bunch of things when you click the drop down arrow. And that's one part of actually giving people points, because you have to define where the rewards come from. But the first thing you really want to do is go into attendees and go into points and actually create your points. And this is also where you turn things on or off. So even if you have, let's say as an example, points assigned for a specific button click, if that point action isn't actually enabled, then it won't apply any points. So couple things here. When you first log in, you're going to see some things that are kind of the default points. And actually, let's just, I am going to go into an event that I know doesn't have any points associated with it. But this is the default look, right? You've got, I don't know, what is this? 8. You have 8 points that are, or maybe 7. Sorry, you have 7 points, point rewards that are what I'll call system points. One is for creating your password. One is for completing step 2 or signing, or checking in. That text doesn't really make sense, but it is for completing the check-in process. One is for visiting the dashboard. One is for downloading a resource. One is for visiting the leaderboard. One is for visiting the speaker page, and one is for visiting the sponsor page. Those are the system actions, right? Create a password, complete check-in, visit the dashboard, download a resource, visit the leaderboard, visit speakers page, and visit sponsors page. And for each action that you have, we have 4 items that you can define. So if I click on visiting the dashboard, you can change the name of it. And the name is important because that's going to show up inside of the pop-up that appears on your dashboard for your attendees. You have the ability to randomize points. I'll explain that in a moment. You can define how many points, and then you can set limits per day, per event, and then you can also set a minimum interval between earning points. So let's talk about what each of those are, right? So if this particular point or point reward is for visiting the dashboard, the minimum interval, I'm going to actually limit per day, I think is pretty obvious. It means that somebody can only earn this particular point reward 3 times in a day. Limit per event, also, I think pretty obvious. Between the start date and the end date of your event, they can only earn this a total of 15 times. The minimum interval between earning points is a little bit more complicated, but it essentially says, okay, if you can earn it 3 times in a day, I don't want somebody to go to the dashboard and just press refresh 3 times or 10 times and then get, the 3 daily max point rewards instantly. This minimum interval says, okay, there has to be a minimum of 60 minutes between the attendee earning the points. So they can't, it's harder to game the system, if you will. So generally speaking, we usually put points between, time between earning points. Now, if I wanted to create a, let's say for clicking a button, I wanted to give somebody points, I would create an action here, and I would say visiting the main stage. So let's just say hypothetically that I'm going to give them points for clicking on a button that is to the main stage, and I'm going to give them 100 points. I'm okay with them getting this 5 times a day. And let's say I have a 4-day event, so that I'm just going to put 20 times per event. And then I'm going to say, my sessions generally are 90 minutes long. So I don't want people to come and go and come and go and come and go, but I'll put a minimum interval of 90 minutes between earning these particular points. So now I'm going to go ahead and click save. And down at the bottom, I have a new visiting the main stage point reward. Now, if I turn this on and then go to design, dashboard, and create a new button, we'll just call this main stage, and then pick an action for points. I'm going to say visiting the main stage. So I'm not going to define this entire button. I'm just going to go ahead and click save. But now when somebody clicks on this button, they will get this point reward. Okay. There's a few other areas that you can apply points. Pretty much any button, whether it's inside of a blog post or inside of the sidebar, can have points, right? So if I were to add some sidebar buttons right here, pick an action for points, I could have that also be for the main stage. There's also under resources, so you can have a system point, right? Which is you can define, so you see downloading a resource, right? So I could turn this on, and what that would do is that would have anybody who downloads any resource that I add to the dashboard, or basically clicks the link or downloads, regardless of what I've got going on here. Let's say I drag that file. So there's something here that says pick an action for points. And in this particular case, this one is a little bit different because there's the default, which is just that generic downloaded a resource. But you can also define specific for resources. You can define a specific action set, right? So let's just say that this resource was my PDF worksheet. Again, this is hypothetical. And if I were to go into attendees and points and click create action, downloading the worksheet, and I want to give them 50 points for that. And we're just going to limit it to 1 per day and 1 for the event. I'm not going to bother with a minimum interval here because they're only going to get it once anyway. So now I'm going to click save and turn that on. Then when I go back and I go into dashboard and I go to PDF worksheet, I can change that from the default to downloading the worksheet. And now when somebody clicks on that PDF worksheet, they will get the PDF worksheet action rather than, or point reward, rather than just the generic added a resource. Now from there, the other areas that you can use points are on each of the steps, right? So under those system points, there's the ability to have points rewarded for creating a password. We don't reward points for completing a waiver, although that is on our list to add. And then we allow points for completing check-in. Now, check-in also, like if you don't actually have a tech check, check-in is just the first time that somebody visits the dashboard. So you can turn this on regardless of whether or not you have a tech check step turned on in your check-in sequence, right? So I could literally just fire that on, and now people will get that. Now, I said to you that I would, I'm going to show you one other place that people can use points, but before I do, I want to explain the randomized points. And here's what it is in short. You can define a range like minimum number of points to maximum number of points for completing a specific step. We usually do it for the check-in step as well as for the password creation step. And here's the reason why it's there. If everybody in your event gets every single point reward that you allow, you're going to have clusters of people with the exact same number of points, which can be challenging. So we almost always have a couple of point rewards that have a spread, right? Like a 10-point spread is enough to create separation on the leaderboard. At least that's what we've found. And ensures that, ensures that you don't just have 10 people at number 1 or 10 people at number 2 or 10 people at number 3 or whatever the answer is there. So it just creates a little bit of spread, and it is completely random. So I try not to make it too big a spread personally, and I would just say this is best practices, not necessarily, you can do whatever you want. You can make it, let's give them a minimum of 1 point and a maximum of 1,000. You could do that, but if you think about it from a fairness perspective, somebody who gets 999 points versus somebody who gets 1 when it's random for the exact same action doesn't seem incredibly fair to me. But you may be different than that and may be willing to do that. So like I said, we tend to make it a spread of about 10 points. And for our larger events, that typically gives us enough separation to not have clusters of people on the leaderboard that have the exact same number of points. Okay, so that's what that maximum and minimum is, or the randomized points. So I also said to you there was another area where points are really valuable, and that's in forms. So when you create a form, one of the things that you have when you're editing the form is the ability to pick an action for points. And this can be essentially what this does is it allows you to, when you give people a form to fill out, you can then reward them with points. So those are, there's actually a little bit more to the form system than that. If you happen to have a question that is a multiple choice or a radio button question, you can actually also pick an action for points here. So let's say I had, what is your favorite color? Red, blue, black, and green. And let's say I wanted to say, okay, you know what? I want to give people points if they select blue. You could create a custom point reward and provide them with points for answering the correct question or answering correctly, right? So when they go through and they submit, you could say, okay, I don't want to give any points for red, black, or green. I only want to give points for blue. And then when you do that, that's another way, right? It's a way to give, it's almost like a quiz, like give people points for answering correctly. So those are a couple of different ways that you can use the point system. There is on, if you want to see who's in the lead on your points, you can do that. So under attendees, and this is actually new for those of you who've been around for a while, there's a leaderboard option, and inside that leaderboard option, you can see who's in the lead and how many points each individual person has. Let's see. I wanted to just show you one other thing here. So let's just say, again, hypothetically speaking, like, you know what, you want to give Alice Fraser, right, this person right here, extra points for, let's say they did something and you're like, oh, I'm really happy with Alice, and you want to give her an extra 100 points. There's something else that you can do with points, and that's in the attendees tab. When you look up specific attendees, the little trophy icon allows you to either add points, subtract points, or if you're really unhappy with them, clear their points. So know that there's a little bit of, you can do some manual actions on individual people. The other thing that you can do inside of the point system is you can actually clear the leaderboard. So if you wanted to have a different leaderboard each day, you could potentially do that. And then, when you're done at the end of the event, if you just want to disable all of your points, you can go through and disable them individually. But up at the top, there's just a disable all toggle, and that will toggle all of your points off. And the moment you do that, then people won't see points anymore. One other thing I want to share with you, the page settings under points gives you a few different things. Number one, it allows you to name your points. Number two, it gives you a page title because it's going to give you a an attendee-facing leaderboard page where you can have some information at the top of the page, right? So in our case, for TVE 5, we had this text at the top. First name, you have earned X PowerPoints, right? And are currently X in X position, right? Great job. So right at the top of the leaderboard page, we just added some of these merge fields or variables, which are listed up at the top here. So you can add somebody's leaderboard position, how many points they have, number of points received for a specific action, action description, and point unit. So those are some variables that you can use in addition to first name and last name, which are always available system-wide. Now, there's one other thing, which is the pop-up, and you can modify the pop-up that people see when they receive points. So in our case, it says, yay, you have received, and then it says action points, right? So it's going to be like 5 PowerPoints, 4, and then action description. And you may have remembered me saying at the beginning, the description was important because it should show up inside of your pop-up. So for clicking on that main stage button, as an example, if we were giving people 100 points, it would say, yay, you have received 100 PowerPoints for visiting the main stage. And that's the pop-up that shows up. It shows up for about 10 seconds. It looks exactly like it does right here. This is the preview. You can modify the background text. You can modify the background text as well as the pop-up. The background color as well as the text color as well. So those are changes that you can make on the leaderboard page. And that's kind of a all-encompassing look of how the gamification system works.